Hello friends, good evening. This is your friend Bhushan. I welcome you all to another edition of Daily News Analysis. So first and foremost, the very warm greetings of the Environment Day to you all. I hope you follow the sustainability pledge in your daily life according to the life principle that were given by our own government. So follow those life principles in your daily life, not just for one day. Okay. So with that note, particularly in this edition, we are going to discuss few important articles that were featured in the Hindu and Indian Express newspapers. So, particularly from the perspective of prelims, in the explain section, we are going to discuss four important articles. The first being new census to be concluded by March 2027. Very important news from the perspective of prelims. The basics of census and related legislative constitutional provisions, very important area from the perspective particularly of prelims. At the same time, delimitation debate surrounding that is another issue which is more important from the perspective of mains GS2. The second article that we are going to discuss is about environmental crisis in India. We are going to discuss some background of how this World Environment Day exactly started and what exactly the environmental crisis being faced by India about. So essentially that particular article is also important from the perspective of prelims as well as mains. The third important article that we are going to discuss is about new national policy on senior citizens. Very important news from the perspective of particularly vulnerable section area in GS2 and GS3. So in that particular article, we are going to discuss some schemes related to the senior citizens as well. So stay tuned. Another important article in science and technology page particularly, we are going to discuss some very important terms. At the same time, the news itself talks about collision of spiral galaxies. So what exactly are galaxies, supernova, Big Bang, all those related terms which are important from the perspective of prelims, we are going to delve into. Particularly in the decoded section, we are going to discuss very important particular case which is titled R.C. Cooper case. See, this particular case and the legacy of it is discussed in the Indian Express newspaper today. So that particular case is important from the perspective of GS2. Many times you have to mention case laws while supporting your arguments in GS2. So from that perspective, this particular article here will give you material not essentially in GS2, but at the same time to use such material in essay as well. So stay tuned. Okay. So the first important article that we are going to discuss is about the census. See, the census now, the government now saying that the census to be concluded by March 27. This particular news is important from the perspective of GS1, particularly population and associated issues. At the same time, basics of census is very, very vital. So in just few months back rather, we have seen the issue related to caste census as well. So along with this census, government is going to conduct caste census simultaneously as well. Another important feature of this particular census, it will be first digital census for India. So, and it will be conducted in 2027. Particularly, this census exercise has been delayed due to the COVID pandemic and subsequent, elections and other political considerations. But so that, essentially we have the data and we are relying on the data when it comes to population and demographics based on our 2011 census. So that data has become pretty much outdated. So we have to conduct census as early as possible. So from that perspective, government has now decided to conduct census in two phases. First phase, house listing, which is of duration 5 to 6 months. The second phase will be population count, to begin from February 27 and finish within a month. See, these two phases are important. First will be house counting and second will be actual population head count. The reference dates, this is important here. So by October 1, 2026, for hilly and snow-bound areas, Ladakh, Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand will be covered. By March 1, 2027, the rest of India will be covered. So essentially, these are the reference dates for the conduction of population census particularly. So what are some key issues in the upcoming population census though? No immediate risk or link to delimitation. See, delimitation exercise is also due. That, amendment of 2002 will essentially be valid until 2026 only. So essentially the next delimitation has to happen post that date particularly. But the government has clarified currently that they are not going to link the delimitation exercise to that particular conduction of census. So this is currently very hot debate. Many times you must have seen, Tamil Nadu objecting to the new delimitation exercise, fearing the loss of parliamentary seats to the southern states, particularly Tamil Nadu, Kerala, etc. Those states have effectively, stabilized their population. So to certain extent, they are below replacement level of population as well. So they fear the loss of representation in India's parliament. So that's why there is an opposition to the delimitation based on the latest census, which will happen by the way, according to the current dates, by March 2027. But again, government has clarified and rather categorically stated that they will not link delimitation now to the census, the current census which will happen, upcoming census which will happen in 2027. Caste enumeration details. The caste data will also likely be simple listing of all castes without grouping under the OBC umbrella. The traditional census, although includes categorization of SCs and STs along with religious denomination of the citizens. See, the traditional normal regular census, 10-yearly census, decadal census, it does conduct or it does record castes belonging to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes along with religious denominations. Now, the government alongside this particular census will also conduct caste census as well. So essentially, the caste census may have limited utility for affirmative action. That is something, that is something afterthought here. So essentially, the caste census is going to be conducted alongside the normal census, decadal census as well. So what exactly is this delimitation debate and related to this 2027 census? As I said, there is opposition by southern state, particularly Tamil Nadu is, keeping the issue hot. The census process will begin with house listing. As I said earlier, house listing the process will start and then we will switch to headline count of population. But there is always opposition, and currently the government has said no to the linking of delimitation and the caste and the proper census of 2027. So essentially, the delimitation particularly is mandated by Article 81 and 82 and has been carried out after the 1951, 61, 71 censuses. So, the delimitation has happened after those happened consistently post every census, decadal census post independence until 1971. After that, the government froze the population to the 1971 census and actually delimited under the delimitation commissions. Actually, the seats have been allocated based on that particular census of 1971. So, seat distribution has remained frozen since the 42nd Amendment in 1976 and 84th Amendment in 2002 until 2026. So, post 2026 we will have new delimitation now. So, let us see what government does here particularly. See, southern states fear losing the representation. At the same time, their government has passed women's reservation bill at the same time. So, women's reservation bill, which was passed with 33% reservation in parliament recently, is also tied to delimitation, putting political pressure on parties to oppose it, obviously, oppose it, not oppose it. So, agenda differs, political agenda differs. Digital data collection is expected to speed up the process. So, essentially, digital data connection will speed up the whole process. So, let us see some basics of census in India, particularly from the perspective of prelims. This part here is very important. So, as I said, census of India is undertaken by Office of the Registrar General and Census Commissioner. So, there is a separate Registrar General and Census Commissioner under Ministry of Home Affairs. So, this is very important fact. Ministry of Home Affairs conduct the normal decadal census particularly. What is the legal framework, by the way? The legal framework is Census Act of 1948. There is Article 246, which is Union List. So, essentially, census is part of Union List. Okay. So, this particular fact is very important here. Article 15, 16 and 340 also deal with reservations for backward classes which necessitates caste-based data in the census and policy formulation. So that's why government for the conduction of caste census, there is this particular constitutional basis, constitutional backing here. So this is particularly about this particular slide here addresses how many censuses have been conducted. There is a census which was there were censuses which were conducted pre-independence as well. For example, first census was conducted way back in 1872 by the British government under the British rule. After that, we have 1881 census, that is first synchronous and complete census conducted across India. Every 10 years thereafter, British started the conduction of census. Post independence, we have the first census in 1951. After that, consistently we have the censuses in 61, 71, 81, 91, 2001 and 2011. Only 2021 was skipped because of the COVID pandemic. Okay. So essentially, let's see some 1931 census of India and some key facts regarding that. So this particular slide here, addresses what exactly is the speciality of this 1931 census. This particular issue has been discussed in the explain page of Indian Express as well. So very important from the perspective of prelims. Conducted during British rule. And who was the Governor General at that point of time in 1931? You guessed right, Lord Irwin. So under the Governor Generalship of Lord Irwin, the 1931 census was conducted. What are some highlights? Population, total population was 351 million. The total population was 351 million approximately, obviously, reflecting growth of about 11% over 1921. So you can clearly see 1931 census shown 11% growth in population compared to 1921 data. Caste data, recorded detailed caste wise data. So this is one of the first census to record the caste wise data across India. First and last time the caste population was recorded in such depth. So this is the speciality of this particular 1931 census. So for the first and last time, the caste data was clearly recorded. The latter censuses included only SCs and STs, not OBCs. Economic and occupational classification, detailed data on occupation, particularly in agriculture, industry and services, were also recorded in that particular census data. Urban-rural divide was clearly visible as well. So over 85% of the population lived in rural areas at that point of time. So you can see the trends in urbanization looking at the data of 1931 censuses. So essentially, this particular census, 1931 census, emerged as a key data point to gauge India's performance when it comes to demographics, economy, its industrial growth, at the same time literacy and other caste related issues as well. So essentially, it recorded religious demography as well. Data included breakdowns by religion, region and linguistic groups. As I said, very holistic data. Social commentary. J.H. Hutton included analytical notes on tribal groups, caste systems and social hierarchies, making the report valuable for sociologists and historians. So from the perspective of sociology and history, this particular data is also important because at that point of time, the analogical notes were added by J.H. Hutton. Okay. Legacy and impact. So 1931 census data is still referred in contemporary times on reservation, social justice and OBC quotas. So post 1951 census avoided full caste listings. There are trappings there while conducting the caste census. Essentially, it laid the framework or groundwork for later socio-economic and demographic studies in India as well. So this is very, very important milestone when it comes to census history. So this is the particular question here. Just comment your answer in the comment section. This particular question is the PYQ from 2023 prelims. So this is another important question. Comment your answer in the comment section. Very important from the perspective of prelims. So the next important article that we are going to discuss is about environmental crisis in India. So what sort of environmental crisis India is facing? See, particularly this particular article here is majorly important from the perspective of mains, GS3 particularly. So that you can actually write point wise here. So from the perspective of prelims, we have to know what exactly, Environment Day, where exactly is this environment is started. So let's dive into it. So this is very relevant from the perspective of GS3, particularly environment section here. So on World Environment Day, we need to reflect on worsening environmental issues over the past decades despite global awareness and efforts. So global, global warming, climate change, all these issues are very prominent nowadays. The world is grappling with three deeply intertwined planetary crises. What are these three deeply intertwined planetary crises? There are carbon emissions, there are biodiversity losses, and there is obviously pollution. Okay. So these crises have deepened over the last 10 years. So despite growing awareness and international efforts, we are not able to control these particular crises. Okay. So what are some major crises being felt in India in the last decades? So there is a carbon emissions. These particular data facts are important from the perspective of prelims now. You must have seen recently there is, question regarding that in prelims of 2025 as well. So global CO2 emissions rose from 34.1 to 37.4 billion metric tons in last 10 years. So you can see almost 10% growth in that. And that is really, really harmful. India's emissions increased from 2.33 to 3.12 billion tons. So mainly due to persistence dependence on coal and oil. So biodiversity loss is also very prevalent. Mass extinction events and ecological disruptions are very much rising. India faces growing threats from deforestation, wetland degradation. At the same time, monoculture agriculture is also flourishing. When it comes to pollution, we are facing the brunt of air pollution. In Delhi particularly, we face this particular issue in winter times most of the time. So for 3 months, we are under that, dark cloud of dark fogs most of the time. So we are facing the crisis of pollution at the same time. What are the root causes? Considering all these triple planetary crisis or threats, what are the root causes? Obviously, fossil fuel dependency, as I just mentioned, is one of the reasons for that. In India, coal still accounts for approximately 60 to 70% of electricity generation, although we are making progress towards increasing the percentage of renewable energy in our mix. Okay, so that along with energy security, we will have, sustainable energy as well, sustainable energy source production at the same time. Deforestation and land use changes. This particular issue is important. Deforestation, most of the time India is getting urbanized. Many times the casualty is forest. Agricultural intensification is another reason. Most of the time with increasing population, the food demand also increases. So with limited availability of land, India has to go for intensive agriculture. So that will create important environmental crisis issues as well. Waste management issue is there. Unchecked urbanization is also another issue. Overconsumption and industrialization, that also is the root cause. So what is the role of global north and large capital in the environmental crisis? See, most of the time, the environmental crisis that is faced by India and other developing countries is the result of cumulative effects over the years. So essentially, it is not the recent pollution that is causing or recent emissions that is causing this particular crisis in these countries. So essentially, there are historical emissions. So that's why the global north and Western countries has to take the responsibility for that particular aspect of environmental crisis. Historically, industrialized nations have accumulated growth or wealth through resource extraction and carbon intensive growth. And now they are continuing to drive crisis via consumption heavy economies at the same time. Okay, in the past 4 decades, this data is important here. Global carbon emissions have risen by over 40% since the Industrial Revolution. So this is very important fact. Almost global carbon emissions have risen by 40% since the Industrial Revolution. That is huge increase, with just 30 transnational corporations, TNCs, responsible for more than 35% of these emissions. So you can see the kind of emissions done by transnational corporations. A 2017 study showed 100 companies were responsible for 71% of global emissions since 1988. So, this is the level of carbon emissions that is done by these particular companies. They are offshoring polluting industries. Many times, these carbon guzzling corporations are offshoring these emissions. to countries like India while controlling global finance and climate narratives. So this is generally, most of the time they involve themselves in propaganda so that they can actually get away with it. In India particularly, foreign investment has targeted sectors like coal mining in Jharkhand and palm oil plantations in the Andaman Islands. So we have seen, palm oil related developments. We have separate mission as well, and we are going to actually do palm oil plantations in Andaman under that particular scheme. So essentially, many times these palm oil plantations can harm or will harm the ecology, the environmental, the pristine environment that is there in Andaman at the same time. So government has to actually balance these two perspectives here, not just rely on the perspective of corporations or corporate profits. How is India positioned, by the way? Smaller per capita carbon footprint. This particular fact is important. What is India's carbon footprint, by the way? It is around 1.9 tons per year. Compare that to US. US is almost 14.7 tons per year. So it is almost 12 to 13 times more. You can see the amount of emissions, carbon emissions done by these Western countries. So on a per capita basis, India is still less than 2 tons per year. Unequal impact. The poor faces the worst of the impact. That is true. Victim of global actions. Most of the times, still there is a resistance by Western countries to take the historic responsibility. So what is the way forward? Global North accountability. We have to ensure global North is held accountable. Corporate regulation is important. Ecological development in terms of sustainability is another area. So sustainable development goals and its achievement is very, very vital. So from that perspective, we have to put in our efforts and we have to put down our foot. So, on this World Environment Day, let's see some history when it comes to this particular day. So what is the purpose of this particular day? It is to raise awareness and encourage action for the protection of our environment. Obviously, why this particular day is chosen? In 1972, the UNGA passed a resolution designating June 5th as World Environment Day during the Stockholm Conference on the Human Environment. The first World Environment Day was celebrated in 1973. What is the theme of first Environment Day? Only one Earth. Okay. At present, a day has become a global movement with participation from millions of people around the world. So what is the host? Who is the host country for 2025? It is Republic of Korea. What is the theme of 2025 World Environment Day? Is Beat Plastic Pollution. It is organized by UNEP. Okay. So this is some history when it comes to World Environment Day. You can see the significance of this particular day, from global awareness to climate advocacy and action to policy discussions to education and engagement. We can actually include all this when it comes to the purpose of World Environment Day. So this is practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So the next important article that we are going to discuss is about very important news about the vulnerable section, that is senior citizens. Government to bring new national policy on senior citizens. See, India is aging, although there is a demographic window for India until 2047. But considering the large population, one of the largest, India is currently the largest, the biggest populated country in the world. So from that perspective, our elderly population is going to, senior citizens population is going to increase. So it is a ticking time bomb per se. So we have to have a very good and a very well structured policy to manage this particular section of our population, so that we can have what it takes to become a developed country by 2047 at the same time. But post that, how to take care of this particular section is another important area. From the perspective of prelims, very important area is knowing about some schemes related to the senior citizens, that vulnerable section of the population. From the perspective of mains also, this particular article is important. So what exactly are these draft national policy on senior citizens until now? So policy development, a new national policy for senior citizens is draft stage under Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. So currently Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment is involved in that particular drafting of the policy. As I said, the demographic change is going to happen. For example, there is recent estimates that almost 12% of total population is senior citizens, uh, essentially 60 plus, 65 plus people. According to 2011 census, senior citizen count is 8.23%. So you can see the increase which is present here. So it is estimated that by 2047 we will have almost 20% of our population in a senior citizen category. So you can see 1/5 of the population by 2047 will be in a senior citizen category. Key discussion areas. So there are some key discussion areas which were included in these policies, from digital inclusion to NGOs and senior citizen associations being involved. At the same time, setting up grievance redressal mechanism, that is always any policies focus area. There is establishment of minimum standards for old age homes. So care homes and old age homes, the demand for those is going to increase in near future, considering that the regulation aspect of it is very, very vital. Promoting community engagement and intergenerational bonding. So this is also important area of focus in that particular policy. Ongoing schemes, review of ongoing schemes is another area. What are some ongoing schemes which are being reviewed? So you have Rashtriya Vayashri Yojana, over 5 lakh beneficiaries given free assisted living devices under that Rashtriya Vayashri Yojana. So we are going to review that particular scheme. There is integrated program for senior citizens, which is supporting almost 708 NGOs. So we are going to review that as well. Both are part of National Action Plan for Welfare of Citizens, so which was there since 2020. So we have to review that particular documents here, those particular schemes and documents. Now, so what are some historical contexts, by the way? The first national policy on older persons was unveiled in 1999. So you can see, before 2000 also government is concerned about that. Updated by Mohini Giri Commission in 2011. So this particular commission name you just mentioned, you just note down, Mohini Giri Commission for senior citizens particularly, replaced by National Action Plan in April 2020. Okay, so essentially welfare of senior citizens is Mohini Giri Commission. That particular commission name you just note down from the perspective of prelims as well as mains, very important. So what are some welfare initiatives for the elderly at a global level? Very important from the perspective of particularly prelims. Vienna Plan of Action. So this is particularly, it is a foundational framework addressing aging issues globally. Vienna Plan of Action related to senior citizens. There is UN Principles for Older Persons, which promotes independence, participation, care and self-fulfillment and with dignity. There is Decade of Healthy Aging, which was declared from 21 to 2030. So 2021 to 2030 is a decade of healthy aging. Remember this particular fact here, they can ask in prelims. So 2030 sustainable agenda is a sustainable development agenda is also there, which addresses SDGs for all, including older population. So that particular agenda is there as well. So these are some initiatives for older people, for senior citizens globally. What about at the state and national level? So we have Sacred Portal, which is there. We have SAGE, we have Elderline, we have RVY, we have IGNO, APS, we have Pradhan Mantri Vay Vandana Yojana, we have Vayoshreshth Samman, we have MWPSC Act of 2007 as well. So, just go through them briefly, very important from the perspective of prelims here. I am not going to discuss each and every scheme here. We have to do limited discussions under this particular section. So this is the practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So the next important article that we are going to discuss is from the perspective of prelims, particularly knowing these terms, science related terms, particularly cosmology, astronomics related terms, very important. Many times you will get confused what exactly is the difference between these terms. So in the science page, this particular news is featured. What exactly the current news or research is about? It says that clash between Andromeda and Milky Way may not have to happen after all. So many times the Andromeda and Milky Way galaxy, it is said earlier that they are headed for a collision course in the next billion years, but the current study says that it may not be a possibility. See, nobody knows these particular things. Okay, it is just the speculations and the studies which are conducted in that regard. So essentially, the current study and the current research indicates that the clash may not happen. Okay, so there are essentially the galaxy clusters are, there are types of galaxies. So just mention some of the names of the types of galaxies that you can remember in the comment section. Very important from the perspective of prelims. From spiral to other types of galaxies, many types of galaxies are there. So this is something about the news. See, from the perspective of prelims, this news is that not that much important. See, just remember, with collision of collision of the galaxies, we will the gravitational waves is also the result of the collision of those sort of collisions, and we will have newer phenomena under the collision as well. At the same time, so essentially, let's see what exactly is this Milky Way and Andromeda galaxy. So you may be knowing, most of the times you hear these words, but many people don't know this. So for those people, we are going to briefly discuss the meaning of each and every one of these terms. So Milky Way galaxy, it is a barred spiral galaxy, while Andromeda galaxy is a spiral galaxy. Why it is called bar? So you can see in the center here, it is a bar-like structure. That's why it is called barred spiral galaxy. It is still a spiral galaxy, but the center is not, circular or spherical in shape, but it is a bar shaped. So that's why, it is called barred spiral galaxy. So our own Milky Way galaxy is barred spiral galaxy, which is number of stars 100 to 400 billion, while almost trillion stars are there in Andromeda galaxy. By the way, Andromeda is also known as M31. This is some nomenclature. Distance from Earth. Okay, as I said, we are in the Milky Way galaxy, while Andromeda galaxy, the nearby galaxy, is around 2.5 million light years away. See, the light year concept is also very, very vital. Light years measures essentially the distance. It is not the unit of time. You just remember that. Okay, so in 1 year, how much kilometer the light travels, that is known as one light year. So essentially, that is the measure. So essentially, the light from Andromeda galaxy will take almost 2.5 million years to reach the Milky Way galaxy. Okay, so essentially it is that far apart. So, but in a cosmic scale, essentially this is not that much. So mass, almost 1.5 trillion solar masses, 1.5 to 2 trillion solar masses. So mass wise, Andromeda is much more. There is age, Andromeda is much younger. It is bit younger compared to our own Milky Way galaxy. Central black hole. So it is said that at the center of every black hole, we will find at the center of every galaxy, we will find the black hole. So in our own galaxy, we have Sagittarius A star, and in Andromeda galaxy, there is a supermassive black hole as well. It is still unnamed. Satellite galaxies include the large and small Magellanic Clouds, includes M32 and M110. Visibility appears as a milky band in the night sky. You can observe the Milky Way galaxy. It is like a band in the night sky. Given you live in the air pollution free area, light pollution free area, you will observe that particular band in the clear night sky. Particularly the best time to observe these things is from October to January, where post monsoon we will have the clear sky. There is very less light pollution at the same time. Visible to the naked eye in the dark skies, that is about Andromeda galaxy. So what is the sun's future, by the way? Our sun is the star. Essentially, it will run out of its fuel and it will collapse on its own when the pressure of when the gravitational pressure overwhelms that particular fuel, the injection of fuel. So particularly from that perspective, the sun will become white dwarf going forward. So essentially, it will not, even if it doesn't swallow the earth, the home planet will be left a burnt ball. Its oceans long since boiled away. So essentially, that is the fate of our sun. It will become a white dwarf. So what exactly, or what sort of limitation is there when it comes to the star becoming a black hole, say white dwarf or red giant. So that particular limit is discovered by S. Chandrasekhar, and that's why it is called as Chandrasekhar limit. So this particular fact is important from the perspective of prelims. It is the maximum mass that a stable white dwarf star can have before it collapses under its own gravity. So it is approximately 1.44 times the mass of sun. This is very important. So essentially, 1.44 mass times the mass of the sun. So essentially, if the mass of the sun, any star's mass is more than 1.44 solar masses, that star will turn into a black hole. But below that, the star will turn into a white dwarf. So that exactly is the meaning of that particular term. Okay. So these are, we are going to discuss some key terms related to that. So you all be knowing what exactly is the Big Bang. Okay. Supernova, it is a powerful explosion marking the death of a massive star. So you can see the image here, that is a supernova image. What exactly are the Cepheids? Cepheids are pulsating variable stars used as a standard candies to measure cosmic distances. Many times, the Cepheids, the meaning of Cepheids is often, disputed due to the misunderstanding it creates due to its supposed meaning, okay, in your head. These are pulsating variable stars. So Cepheids are not supernova, these are pulsating variable stars. What exactly are the nebula? It is a cloud of gas and dust in space, often a star forming region or supernova remnant. It is a star forming region. It is, a sort of what I will say. So it is a nursery for the budding stars. So that is what is the right sort of description for nebula. Gravitational waves, these are ripples in the space time. LIGO and other observatories have already observed or recorded the existence of gravitational waves. Related to that, gravitational lensing phenomena is also important. See, light is affected by gravity, that we know. So even light cannot escape the force of gravity. So essentially, if there is massive body before the light source, okay, so essentially the light is bent, or it is optimized sort of. So essentially bending of light and optimization of that light leads to the more clearer picture of that particular body despite the massive body in between. So that is the effect of gravitational lensing. It happens because essentially the light is affected by gravity. Black holes, you must be knowing the meaning of it. Pulsars, so pulsars are rapidly rotating neutron stars. See, this particular fact is important. So these are neutron stars, but they are rapidly rotating. So you will find many times there is pulsed beams being emitted or ejected from these particular neutron stars, and they are very regular. So you essentially those are called pulsars. So neutron stars, dense stellar remnants after the supernova, composed almost entirely of neutrons, while red giants are late stage stars life when it expands and cools after exhausting hydrogen fuel. White dwarfs, after red giant, mostly according to the Chandrasekhar limit, they either become white dwarfs or black holes. This generally is the case. So these are some terms that we discussed. Just go through the meaning of them briefly and answer this particular question. This is the PYQ which was asked in recent times. So just comment your answer in the comment section. So particularly in the decoded section, we are going to discuss very important article that was featured under the Indian Express 75 years reshaping the Republic. So under this particular heading, they are actually discussing very important personalities, judgments, etc. So from the perspective of GS2, this become very vital case law, and studying the impact of that is important from the perspective of mains. Okay, so essentially, see, most of the time what is happening is, many times we are discussing too many editorials from GS3. So mostly you will end up giving too much time in GS3. In that paper, UPSC is not awarding that higher marks. So essentially, what is ignored area is GS1, 2 and 4. So essentially, and particularly GS2 is also scoring. So you can see the recent trends, GS2 and 4 are always scoring. So from that perspective, we have to balance the GS3, which is overwhelming in recent times, with GS2, so that we can diversify our own perspective in this particular arena or area. So that's why I have chosen these particular articles to be discussed in the decoded section. So from the perspective of history, what exactly is this R.C. Cooper case? So R.C. Cooper case is related to the nationalization of banks. So in that particular case, government, after the ordinance, 1969 ordinance of nationalization of banks, it was challenged by a person named R.C. Cooper in the Supreme Court. So Supreme Court actually termed that particular ordinance, bank nationalization ordinance of 1969, unconstitutional. So you can see the blow it gave to the government's agenda at that point of time. Okay, so although the reasoning behind the terming it unconstitutional is varying, what exactly clear is it sets very important constitutional precedent. So this particular case law is very, very vital. So in as I said, there is 1969 ordinance. What exactly is this ordinance called? It is Banking Companies Acquisitions and Transfers of Undertakings Act 1969, which led to 14 banks being nationalized in 1969. Why did R.C. Cooper challenge this particular ordinance though? So the first and foremost thing to understand is R.C. Cooper is a Swatantra Party leader. Okay, he is a member of the Swatantra Party, but at the same time, he is a shareholder in CBI and other bank. So essentially, he is a director of CBI, a central bank at that point of time. Okay, so he is a stakeholder and shareholder, and he challenged that particular nationalization ordinance act. So essentially, he argued that ordinance was undemocratically passed by bypassing the parliament. Obviously, it bypassed parliament. It is ordinance under article 123 of the constitution. It violated article 14, 19, 1F, 31 by offering unfair compensation and discriminating against certain banks. So compensation, on the part of compensation, he challenged this particular act. The law ignores shareholders' rights and undervalued assets like goodwill. He aimed to uphold the sanctity of the constitution. So the main issue here is the fair compensation. Okay. So at that point of time, he challenged it on the basis of these grounds. So particularly limit, against, he argued that, there is arbitrary use of state power. The ordinance was passed just days before Parliament convened and without proper debate. So without debate, it was passed, essentially. So what is the Supreme Court verdict which came in February 10, 1970? The bank nationalization as a policy was not unconstitutional, but the method of execution was. Okay, held that the Banking Companies Act of 1969 unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court's argument here is very, very important. Unconstitutional due to unfair compensation to shareholders, at the same time discriminatory practices violating Article 14. It affirmed directive principles cannot override fundamental rights. Okay, there is a tussle between fundamental rights and directive principles. Many times from A.K. Gopalan until Keshwanand Bharti judgment, you have these judgments where Supreme Court is giving contradictory opinions. So that trajectory is important. That constitutional trajectory is very, very vital from the perspective of mains. So just go through that particular trajectory. I am not going to discuss those many cases here. So I am going to discuss on this particular issue at hand. So impact, not intent of state action, is the test of constitutionality. So effect test is actually implemented by the Supreme Court in this particular judgment. So essentially, impact and effect is more important than the intent. So that is the meaning of that particular effect test. What is the importance of this particular verdict, by the way? A new ordinance was immediately issued after the verdict to revise the compensation fairly. So now the new law was more realistic with 3-year full cash compensation and interest. So there is revisions when it comes to compensation in that particular act. What is the judicial significance, by the way? It reversed the principles from A.K. Gopalan case of 1950. So what happened in the A.K. Gopalan case? it treated rights in isolation, as here SE held that the impact of state action on individual rights determined its constitutionality. So essentially, in A.K. Gopalan case, Supreme Court held that each fundamental rights operated in isolation, and that as long as the law adhered to one specific constitutional provisions, its effects on other rights were irrelevant. So you can see, the effect of hearing, or effect of holding the rights in isolation. Essentially, it laid the foundation. So this particular R.C. Cooper case laid the foundation of public interest litigation, basic structure doctrine. It also became the base for Maneka Gandhi case of 1978. So these are all landmark cases. Can you tell me in which case particularly the PIL was officially, or rather, PIL was started? Just, comment your answer to that question in the comment section. Keshwanand Bharti case, you are already knowing the very famous case that, and in Maneka Gandhi case, what exactly is Supreme Court said? It significantly expanded the interpretation of Article 21 in Maneka Gandhi case. So essentially, it has the tremendous impact. R.C. Cooper case has tremendous impact in the subsequent Supreme Court judgments. So R.C. Cooper's legacy. So who is this R.C. Cooper, by the way? As I said, he's a Swatantra Party leader. You may get the question on that particular person as well. So he is an economist, chartered accountant, Swatantra Party leader. And he protested not for personal gain but constitutional principles. So he is one of the architect of the modern constitutional jurisprudence. Okay. So essentially, his legal battles contributed to judicial review, reinforcing citizens' right against arbitrary state action. See, most of the time, R.C. Cooper case is important from the perspective of fair compensation. Although the right to property is not a fundamental right under Article 31 currently, which was done away with and subsequently actually upheld by Supreme Court. Now the right to property is a constitutional right under Article 300A. But many times the compensation issue is very, very vital. So from that perspective also, the fair and legible compensation is, as a principle, as an area of concern, was effectively emerged after this particular case, R.C. Cooper case. So it is relevant, very much, pretty much relevant today. Though the right to property was removed, it is still a constitutional legal right. Okay. It established constitutional rights must be judged by real impact of state action, not merely its stated objective. So it's essentially, it instituted the effect test. His case remains foundational to judicial review, accountability and fairness in governance. So as I said, fair compensation is one of the foremost area, although we don't have fundamental right to property now, but the fair compensation is often upheld by Supreme Court. So in conclusion, we can say that it marked a turning point in bank nationalization law. It safeguarded fundamental rights while supporting socialist objectives. So many times, it is misinterpreted as the subjugation of socialist principle by individual rights in the but that is not the case. So essentially, although there is to certain extent to certain extent, Supreme Court upheld the right to property, the right to fair compensation, but at the same time, socialist principles are not per se affected by that. By applying the effect test, the court broadened the interpretation of Article 19, ensuring fair compensation of property acquisition, upheld shareholder rights without undermining Parliament's legislative power. So it is one of the foremost cases of constitutional jurisprudence. So this is the practice question for you, very important from the perspective of mains, GS2 and constitutional debates. So this is all from my side. Stay tuned for another edition of Daily News Analysis. Thank you.